Numerous British television sitcoms have been adapted for American audiences, often with disappointing results. This video will examine some of the top-rated UK sitcoms that experienced unsuccessful American remakes, including a long-running favourite that delighted audiences in the late 1960s and early 1970s. We'll explore the original successes and their American versions, considering the various elements that may have contributed to their divergent receptions. The 44th best British sitcom, according to visitors to the Ranker website, is Gavin and Stacey. The long-distance love affair of the titular characters, played by Matthew Horne and Joanna Page, was created and written by James Corden and Ruth Jones, who co-star as the couple's respective best friends. Gavin and Stacey's relationship is definitely the antithesis of Shakespeare's star-crossed lovers, most of the time anyway. Gavin and Stacey was the most nominated show in the 2007 British Comedy Awards. The series spanned 18 years, and the Christmas 2024 series finale was the most watched TV programme on a Christmas day in the UK for 23 years, drawing an average audience of 19.1 million viewers. It's a story that seems easy to transplant into another location, so an American adaptation does not seem so outlandish. The remake was on and off and on again more times than the sometimes turbulent relationship of its two lead characters. The first attempt by NBC in 2008 barely got past the script stage. 2 years later, rival network ABC got close to filming a pilot before giving up. At this point, co-creator and star Ruth Jones insisted that it wouldn't be occurring, but she was wrong. Finally, in 2013, Fox got an American remake of Gavin and Stacey off the ground and in front of cameras. Fox changed the title to Us and Them, a clue to their intention to increase the friction between the couple's families. Despite the series' name change, the plot still revolved around a couple named Gavin and Stacey who decide to meet up after building up an online romance. Nessa is still Nessa, but Corden's Neil Smithy Smith inexplicably changes to Archie, played by stand-up comic Dustin Ibarra, who we'll be seeing him again later in this series. In the US show, Gavin is from New York and Stacey is from Pennsylvania, which in a car is the same distance as Essex to Wales in the British version. Originally, Fox ordered a series of 13 episodes, but executives were so unimpressed with what they saw, they halted production partway through with only 7 episodes completed. They were never to be screened on the network. A year later, they put the series out of its misery and dumped the handful of completed episodes on the Sony-owned streaming service Crackle in 2014. There was no second series. Reviews were mixed. One called the show a monstrosity and said, "This has taken the basic conceit and stripped away everything that made it work." In 2019, when asked why the various American versions didn't work, James Corden responded, "They never understood what the show was about. They would buy the show and immediately change it." Apparently, US producers wanted more conflict between the two families, but according to Corden, our show wasn't about that. The 43rd best British TV sitcom is On the Buses. This immensely popular show centred on bus driver Stan Butler, his conductor Jack, the depot inspector Blakey and Stan's family. It is repeated on British television right up to the present time and has also been broadcast in Australia, New Zealand and Holland. So, in 1973, the Americans wanted in on the fun, but with their own version. The UK show was a bit too racy for American network television. NBC bought the format, where it was remade as Lots of Luck, changing Stan from bus driver to working in the bus company Lost Property Office and changing the family name from Butler to Belmont. Jack was changed to a bus driver who was oddly named Bummy. There was no Blakey character, but Stan's family were all there. It is not stated anywhere, but presumably taking the actual buses out of the show was for practical purposes, while the dynamics of the bus company would remain. The original studio-based British show created a number of tricks to show buses in the studio, like a fake front of a bus facing the audience so the non-existent sides would not be seen, although sometimes they did use a studio large enough to get a double-decker bus in. Dom DeLuise starred as Stan. This was just as he was becoming widely recognised and a frequent guest on popular television variety shows. Lots of Luck was broadcast just before the beginning of his successful collaborations with Mel Brooks in films like Blazing Saddles. Despite being based on the UK format by Ronald Chesley and Ronald Wolfe, using some of the same storylines, Chesley and Wolfe did not feature in the credits for the American show, which credits Sam Denoff, Bill Persky and Carl Rayner as creators and principal writers. The show should have been a ratings hit. Rayner was the creator and producer of The Dick Van Dyke Show, which was arguably the best American comedy series of all time. The pilot was not particularly well reviewed. It was based on one of the top-rated British episodes where the lavatory in Stan's home gets broken and needs to be replaced. In The Village Voice, Sybil Carlin said that NBC's mistake was apparently believing that common has to mean coarse, stupid, tasteless and vulgar, particularly referencing Olive getting her foot stuck in the toilet cistern tank. She criticised the characters for being cardboard, describing the laugh track as one of the most obnoxious ever heard. A further 22 episodes were made, the first one being a revised version of the pilot. On the That's Entertainment website, Jackson Upperco said, "The show is sometimes very funny, however it's often rude and crude for 70s standards. In fact, the show was deemed so angry in its early episodes the producers were forced to lighten the show and make it more appealing." Later episodes did get better reviews. Dom DeLuise was particularly praised for his terrific comedic timing, but the show failed to attract a large audience, even when they were broadcast right after Sanford and Son, a highly successful remake of British sitcom Steptoe and Son. The complete series has been available on DVD. At number 41 in the list of all-time best British sitcoms is Spaced. Spaced was simply a cult classic that really should not have been considered for an American remake. Spaced was written by and starred Simon Pegg and Jessica Hines as Tim and Daisy. They are strangers who conspire to rent a flat together under the pretense they are in a relationship, as the landlord has specified they will only let to a professional couple. Co-starring is Nick Frost as Tim's mate Mike, who shares Tim's love of computer games, science fiction and cult films. Then there is the landlady and another tenant, an avant-garde artist. Tim and Mike sometimes act out their favourite scenes from films, juxtaposing the exaggerated Hollywood cliches with their own mundane and predictable British lives. This should have been a clue why an American remake was a bad idea. Regrettably, Simon Pegg, Jessica Hines and director Edgar Wright had naively signed away their rights to Spaced to ITV company London Weekend Television, who licensed the idea to Fox without the trio's knowledge. Attempting to remake the show without any input from Simon Pegg, Jessica Hines and Edgar Wright was a deeply flawed strategy. Fox hired former Will and Grace writer Adam Barr to adapt the series, who was executive producer of the pilot along with McGee, director of Terminator Salvation and the Charlie's Angels movies, and Robert Greene. Warner Television, Wonderland Sound and Vision and Granada were all behind this pilot adaptation. What could they do with the source material? The problem was being in America put the characters in reach of their Hollywood idols, when in the original show our heroes only dreamt and could reenact their favourite film scenes at home. The proximity of Hollywood diluted their cult admiration. The Spaced remake entered production in 2008 with the clear intention to cash in on the success of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright's first two movies in their Cornetto trilogy, by using their names in the promotional material. Meanwhile, the producers ignored Jessica Hines' contribution to the original show. Of course, she didn't have a major role to play in the Pegg and Wright movies, so she wasn't seen as a big draw for those reading press announcements of the remake. However, before the show even entered production, Simon Pegg was very vocal in the press about his negative feelings toward the remake. He attacked Fox, Warner, Wonderland and Granada about the US format of Spaced, saying that he, Edgar and Jessica wanted nothing to do with the new version. Pegg received many supportive messages from fans of the original show. So the pilot was made. From what I've seen, very little was done to adapt the script apart from Americanising some references. The script wasn't so much the problem, but the acting, or rather lack of it. There was no chemistry. Although Tim and Daisy start out as strangers, their performances made it look like they didn't even like each other. Mike was stiff, far from looking and sounding like he wanted to handle a gun or be in the Territorial Army. They all recited their lines like emotionless robots. No one wanted this. Not even Fox, as it seems, as the pilot was not even aired and the project was cancelled. I think I should leave the last words to Simon Pegg, who said the 2008 pilot was painful to watch. In 38th place on the list of all-time best British sitcoms is Men Behaving Badly. The show, written by Simon Nye and based on his book Men Behaving Badly, followed two immature beer-guzzling flatmates and their rude, crude misadventures. When TV producer Beryl Virtue found his book, she tracked down the author to the bank where he was working and hired him to write the show. The original pair of laddish wasters were played by Harry Enfield and Martin Clunes as Dermot and Gary. Enfield quit after one series, feeling ill-suited to sitcom, to be replaced by Neil Morrissey as the equally feckless Tony. With the show's apparent star now gone, ITV lost faith in the series and cancelled it after the second season, so Virtue pitched it to the BBC, who in 1994 transmitted the third series in a post-Watershed slot. Somehow, Nye was invited to America by the Casey Werner production company. Instead of just writing alone, there were 14 writers. Nye just watched and looked British. A first season of the remake was completed and aired, but there was friction between the actors and someone on the production team. Two of the principal actors were replaced for season 2, but that changed the dynamic of the show and the ratings dropped. It was cancelled after 6 episodes, with the remaining 7 episodes unaired. It was doomed to failure. Cheeky British humour failed to translate when the show tamed the edginess. Reviewers still found the toned down content to be too risque. It was never going to reach the same cult status as the original. The original series was eventually screened in the US on BBC America as British Men Behaving Badly, where the British version was screened under its original title in Australia. On the ABC network, the US series was broadcast on the 7 network as It's a Man's World. So there you have it. 4 times the charm, 0 times the success. From the beaches of Gavin and Stacey to the buses of, well, on the buses, the chaotic flat of Spaced and the laddish antics of Men Behaving Badly, these British sitcoms just couldn't translate across the pond. Perhaps it's the nuances of British humour, or maybe some things are better left alone. Whatever the reason, these remakes serve as a cautionary tale. Some TV gold is best left untouched. If you enjoyed this stateside excursion, click like and subscribe for more TV sitcom stories. Thanks for watching.